Let's get it. Can I post my socials here so the chat can follow me? What's going on today? Can you raid me? I'm about to go live. What is this? All right, guys, we got to take a quick time out here. Hope you have an amazing stream, but I got to go set up for mine. All right, time out. All right, we're gonna go to school. Can we go to school for a second, everybody? Toxic Killer School today, guys. If you've ever wondered what's good etiquette for being in a stream chat, when is something considered self-promo? I need help with OBS. How can I use social media to grow my brand? Mental health while streaming, then come on through Toxic Killer 50's Twitch channel. Starting April 17th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be starting a podcast to go over things that don't get mentioned a lot on Twitch that can really help you out. We'll have guests in some episodes. Some will just be me, but it's going to be a place where you can ask all of your questions, get answers to anything you want answered in a safe, judgment-free space. So come on down to the channel April 17th, twitch.tv/ToxicKiller50. And let's have an honest conversation about the things that you need to do to potentially grow your channel on Twitch. Appreciate you all, and we will see you soon. What's going on, everybody? It's Sunday. We made it to another Sunday. Another weekend is coming to a close, but we are here. Sorry about the PNG image. I couldn't find a picture to indicate that there was no podcast guest, so you'll just have to deal with one of my YouTube video thumbnails up in the top corner instead of seeing my Word document of talking points. I hope everybody is doing okay. Today's episode is hi Yumi. Today's episode is going to be about tips and tricks to create an engaging chat. I am looking forward to this one. I've got roundabout 4 talking points put together, so I don't think it's going to take the entire stream. But if anybody has any questions or tips or tricks, I know we have a few content creators in here. We can absolutely have a discussion about those. So, tips and tricks for creating an engaging chat. If anybody has any questions as we're going along, feel free to ask them in the chat. And as always, at the beginning of every episode, the disclaimer of, just because we're talking about this doesn't mean it's one size fits all. Some of these things might work for you, some might not. Some may work better than they worked for me. This is just something that these are things that I've learned from my time creating content over the last almost 2 years. And we're just going to have a discussion about it, with the knowledge that it's not one size fits all. But these are just things that can help increase people chatting, make people, want to stay around the stream for longer when they do come in and watch, as long as they have the time and, all that kind of stuff. So the first really big point, and I think this one is really important. It gets lost in the shuffle a lot for a lot of content creators, but it's really important, and I want to emphasize it, right? It is our job as a streamer to engage with our chat. It is not the chat's job to drive conversation. So I want to repeat that again, because this is probably one of the most important talking points that I have of the 4 that I put together. It's our job as the streamer to engage with our chat. It is not the chat's job to drive to come in and to talk. We as a content creator, we need to build that connection with our viewers to make them want to converse when they come in. And there are going to be some people that just aren't going to talk, and that's okay. But the more engaging and inviting we are when people do come in, the more likely they are to talk to us. And the more often they talk to us, it's going to encourage other people to talk. And that's kind of how we boost our engagement. We need to make sure that we're engaging with our chat on a regular basis. A very big part of growth is learning how to properly interact with people within our chat. Viewership retention comes and continues to grow when we take the time to build a strong relationship with our viewers, right? So what does that mean, right? What does building a relationship with our viewers means? What does that mean? How, people in the chat, what do you think? What does that mean to you? There you go. So that's a big one, right? Making everybody feel like they're not just another viewer, right? There's a very human side to Twitch, and even as a content creator who watches Twitch, I always want to make people feel like I want to feel like not just another viewer when I go and I am in somebody else's stream, right? I think about how many times this has probably happened to some of us when we're watching streams, where you go into a stream and you say hello, and maybe it's the first time you've been in there, and it takes like 5 minutes for the person to respond, right? And then you're like, well, I'm out of here because I wanted to have a conversation, and I sent 5 messages, and it took 10 minutes for them to respond. For me, maintaining this strong communication is having regulars pop in and be able to talk about life events and struggles for me to build a connection and to provide some. See, that's another good one. I try to do that, right? We're all people. I have things that happen to me off of stream that make life hard. For me, streaming is a reprieve. It's a break. It's something I enjoy doing. It's something I get to do. And I always want people to feel safe when they come in here. But we're really, at the end of the day, it shouldn't feel like we're talking to our viewers or our community. It should feel like we're talking to our friends. One of the best ways to kind of get that chatting started, for those of you guys who struggle with this, right? Because I know a lot of newer streamers, a lot of even some seasoned streamers, they sometimes struggle with chatting content. The best way to kind of help build this skill is for you as the content creator, or me, or whoever is the one streaming, it is to pre-plan a topic of conversation. There's a lot of ways that you can do this. You can have a question of the day like I do. You could talk about maybe a current event that's not divisive. Like maybe there's something going on in the news that's not like a touchy subject, or maybe there's some kind of video game news that came out that you're really excited about. That maybe you're talking about an idea that you want to do from a content creation perspective, but just having a mental note of, what you want to go into every stream discussing is a really good way to kind of build that skill. And over time, you can kind of rely on it a little bit less, because as you're developing a relationship with your overall community, the conversation topic is more going to be for newer people to make them feel immediately welcomed. So a question of the day is really good because it can kind of be an icebreaker question where, we may have things that we're talking about throughout the stream that might make a new chatter uncomfortable. But if you're new to a stream and I'm the content creator, and I say, hey, Spirit Wolf, or hey, Yumi, or hey, Raven, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, right? And it's your first time in, and I say, hey, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? We're actually talking about ice cream today. You're going to be more likely to answer that question because you're like, oh, well, I don't need to, I don't need to have a long thought out answer for this. I know my favorite. Strawberry. So But if that's what we're discussing on the stream that day, right, then as a new viewer, you're immediately interjected into the conversation. And inevitably, there's probably somebody else in the chat that likes strawberry ice cream too, right? So it now you feel like a part of the community. See, that's a good one too. You know, it could be topical. It could be it could be topical. It could be based on a different category. It could be based on the game you're playing. But it's an easy way for people to feel welcome more quickly, and they don't feel uncomfortable when they come into your chat for the first time, right? You know, it's also, I think, for a lot of content creators, the interaction part is a comfort thing, right? Like streaming, in terms of like you playing a game and also having to communicate with chat, in the terms of gaming, streaming is very different from how a lot of us would play video games, right? You know, normally if we're playing a single player game, we're not talking to anybody. We're not having a conversation. We're just staring at a screen playing a video game, unless we're playing multiplayer. But streaming kind of combines the two. It's really one of those things where it's not a natural skill that a lot of us have, because as a gamer, unless you're playing Call of Duty or Fortnite or something where there's other people involved, if you're not on Twitch and you're not live, like, you're not having a conversation with other people. Like, it's just not something that happens. So as you're practicing this and starting out, it's the topics of conversation should be super light, because a main point of this is totally to break the ice, to make people feel the first time they come in that they're immediately a part of the overall group. And yeah, narrating what you're doing is a great way to fill dead space, because there's not, even if you're having a really good stream, there's not always going to be that back and forth interaction. So, you know, I think it's just an important skill to have, where there's going to be dead space. So when there's dead space, you can kind of transition to narrating what you're doing or where you're going, or maybe tell a story of something that happened to you that week, or, you know, there's so many ways to fill that dead space, but it's really important to fill it with something, because if it's just silent and somebody's maybe looking at streams or looking at new people to watch, they're just going to pass over, right? Because they're going to be like, well, they're not talking and they're just playing a game. So that's really important. If you are somebody who gets hyper focused on certain games, so like, let's say, for example, you play a lot of Apex Legends or something, and, you know, this is a good point. It happened last night to somebody I rated to. He was in the final circle of Apex Legends, and me and somebody I was streaming with, we double rated this person. I'm not going to name names. There's no reason to do that. And it took him like 7 or 8 minutes to acknowledge that we even rated. And that, making appropriate game choices so that you can devote the proper amount of attention to your chat as well as the game is very important. If you struggle with interacting with your chat, even if you like first-person shooter games, maybe those are not the best games to stream, right? Like, and that's okay. You can still enjoy those games, but remember, when we're live, the most important part is our chat. It's the people who are in there, like, talking and driving the conversation. Like, those are the most important. So that's really the meat of the main first point, right? Is you can't get upset at your chat for not talking if we're not doing the things that we need to do to drive the conversation. It's very, very important to have a topic of conversation for our stream. It's very important to make sure that we're driving the conversation and not relying on our chat to drive the conversation. Like, I should be asking you guys as you come in, how was your weekend? How was your day? You know, what are what are you up to? You know, how's life? It's not your job to come in and just like say that off the bat, right? Like I should be, you know, making you feel welcome, not the other way around. So my second talking point, there's also several mini games that I use that are super helpful and are free that you can utilize to give your chat things to do while they're in your channel. So the first one is super easy to set up. It's that Pokemon community game that a lot of people have. It is a really cool way to keep people engaged and involved in the stream. And it's just a fun way to kind of hang out, right? Like it gives you something to do while you're watching if you don't feel like talking. And that's okay. Like I don't mind if somebody sits in here and is just going to catch Pokemon. As long as they're enjoying their time, like watching the content. Like I have people that will just sit in here for hours and catch Pokemon, and that's cool. The other big thing is to be intentional about channel points. Channel points are huge. A lot of my content, like actual non-gameplay content, a lot of it is from channel points. Whether it's a Pokemon or a Magic opening, whether it's a snap camera filter that someone can redeem, whether it's making my camera disappear or flip upside down or whatever, right? Those are ways that your chat can directly engage with the stream. So learning how to utilize things like Streamer Bot or Mix It Up or Snap Camera. Oh my God. Hold on. Let me set a timer. You can go and do things like having your viewers turn off or flip your camera. There are also things you can do with Snap Camera to utilize filters to turn you into a potato or an eggplant or a banana or whatever there's a filter for. You should be very intentional with your channel points. Put thought into it, because if you don't, there's not as much content that comes with that. So that's a really big one. And always be willing to constantly update your channel points, right? Like you shouldn't just make channel points and they should never change. Is there going to be stuff that might stay on there like super long term? Yeah. Like Pokemon and Magic cards will probably be redeems for a long time for me. As you're growing and evolving, your channel point redemptions should kind of evolve with it. Perfect example is I did a Batman cosplay on my subathon. We already had the bedtime story channel point redemption. So then like I got to thinking like I'm going to own this Batman costume that's behind me, right? I was like, well, what can we do to like reuse that costume? So we were trying to figure out creative ways, or I was thinking about creative ways to use the Batman thing. I'll finish my point and then I'll read the story. So I thought, why don't we mix the two together, and we'll wear the Batman costume, but we'll read bedtime stories, and I will read the bedtime stories while trying to do a really shitty Batman impression. Right? So that's what we did. I just did the first one, and I think people were confused, but they were also like, this is fucking awesome. And now I've got to do it again next week. It's a channel points redemption currently. But like, it's stuff like that. My recommendations for those without proper setups. I don't have space like lights and a secondary camera. So, you know, you don't need a secondary camera to do things with like turning off your camera source or, you know, zooming in or, those are all things you can do, or even like nested scenes. So like you could do like that I'm king of the world nested scene thing that I have, Raven. Like that's something you could do without needing a second camera or having a full proper setup. I'll switch over to my live. I'll switch over to my live. Hold on a second. So, perfect example. Right? Perfect example. This is a nested scene. You could do this. It's super easy to set up in StreamerBot, right? Not hard. It's really easy to do. You don't need a proper setup to do that. You literally could do that without a proper setup. Super duper easy, right? It's not very hard to set up a nested scene. It's not a lot of work. It's relatively easy to set up in StreamerBot or mix it up. And yeah, the camera stuff, being able to flip the camera upside down or turn the camera off. Those are also things that are relatively easy to do without a proper setup, as long as you have access to OBS. So that's like another channel point redemption. I think that would be super easy for a lot of people to utilize if they don't have like, 2 cameras or 3 cameras or 4 cameras or whatever. But I have to read a bedtime story, so I'm gonna go grab a book. And boss of them all, the ghost of the wood, call off the trip scouts. I really and truly think you should. Nonsense, said Mama, who overlooked spooks indeed. Not another word. Your papa's just trying to give you a scare. So be off with you, scouts, smiled wise Mama Bear. It's a double ghost lesson, said Jane with a grin. There are no such things. There have never been. But just as sure as night follows day, it's fun to be scared of them anyway. The end. That was story time with Toxic. Okay, so what were we talking about? We were talking about Snap Camera. We talked a little bit on this slightly earlier. But the other thing is we were saying there's always going to be quiet stretches, but as a streamer, we need to continue talking in order to fill that silence. And that's another really big one. It's our job when we're live to continuously talk when we have moments where the chat is not as engaged, right? It could be during a boss fight. Maybe we're playing something where we're exploring a little bit and there's not as much action that's filling. So we need to kind of talk. Maybe we're just starting out and we don't have a ton of viewers yet, and we're pushing towards affiliate, and there's 3 or 4 people in there, and there's a lot of lurkers. This is kind of your time to build that skill, because if you're building that skill as you're growing, as your audience gets larger, it becomes a lot easier for you to kind of be comfortable with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 viewers, right? But if you're not practicing having those interactions and that engagement and filling that dead space, it becomes harder to carry on conversation and have cohesion when the chat is kind of flying, right? And it's a good thing to kind of do. It can be super complicated if you're playing a story-driven game, but if you're doing some of those things that we talked about earlier, like narrating what you are trying to accomplish or your thought process for accomplishing a certain part of a game, it can be a very, 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 very easy way for you to gain that skill. Remember that if you are not talking to chat and being active in chat is the number one way to retain viewers and people who keep the conversation going. So if you're not doing that stuff as a general rule, it's going to be very difficult for you to continue to attract people to come back. If you're ignoring people in your chat if you're not having good conversations with them, if you're just focused on your game and not doing anything, people are way less likely to come back. If you notice that chat is slowing down a little bit, maybe ask a question to kind of spark somebody to say something, right? Like, so if now is actually a good example because everybody's kind of quiet after the story, right? I might say, like, hey, everybody, how was your weekend? Like, what did you do yesterday? So what did you guys do yesterday, right? Super easy question to kind of spark things. And it can kind of like kick, maybe it'll kick chat back out, right? If it doesn't, that's perfectly fine. Maybe that means that some people had to get up for a few minutes and they're coming back later. Maybe it means that they're just, invested in the content and that's okay. It's not always going to work every time you ask a question to re-spark up the chat, but it's a good way to kind of maybe stop a dead spot or an area where there's no talking from happening. But see, like, there we go, right? Like, it's a good way to kind of bring the conversation back, right? If the topic is kind of, dying down a little bit, or maybe we were talking about a particular thing for too long and then we need to kind of transition into a different topic. But like, that's another way you can kind of bring it back. And, the other thing too, is if you go several minutes without responding to messages or driving that conversation, like nobody's going to tell you they're not going to come back. They're just going to pop off the tab and then they're probably not going to come back. So you have to think of it like you're making a first impression. And you're not going to make a great first impression if like somebody has to type 10 or 11 messages before they get responded to. The other thing, and we did briefly touch on this before, the other thing that I think is really, really big that we want to make sure that we're doing is being very conscious about the games we're playing. So if, as an example, if like we were talking about, if you are bad about responding to chat when you're playing shooting games, if you are struggling at that as a skill, I think that focusing on games where you can focus on the game and interact with chat at the same time is really good to focus on until you kind of develop that skill of being able to play a shooting game and like talk at the same time. Because like, I would rather lose a game of Apex than lose a follower or a viewer because I didn't respond back. Do you stick to a main type of content you want to create, or do you ever feel like you try to balance too much? I don't know how I want to branch out, and you seem to be doing a good job. So here's the thing for me. I think when you're looking at branching out, you need to kind of think a little bit about, from a content perspective, like what do you want to create? I'm not saying you have to stick to creating one thing. There can be a mixture of like just chatting content, and there can be a mixture of gaming and just chatting, and maybe there's like some original stuff you want to create, Havo, right? But like you have to, at some point when you start branching out, you really have to start planning out your content, if that makes sense. When I do this podcast, I literally sit down and I write an episode, right? Like I'll go through, I'll take an hour and I'll write a full episode so that content is then planned out, right? Like this was pre-planned. If I'm doing a game or a theme, like on Saturday, right? There's easy ways to make the content more interactive. Like for me, Dixper's been a big thing, right? Like, so for last night, I took maybe 20 minutes and I made a custom Dixper collection specifically for Saturday nights, right? And that was like a really easy way to like spice up the content without feeling like it needs to suffer. I want to add, but keep Twitch the same focus I have now, which is a ton of time. So here's the thing, right? The thing about creating content on other platforms is it's kind of a necessary evil, right? So what I would recommend is, if you want Twitch to be the main, right? Maybe focus on Twitch and then like 2 other forms of content. So like, we'll just say, maybe for me, currently it's TikTok and YouTube, right? So I live stream on Twitch. And then when I am making other content, when I'm making clips or I'm making like stuff, I try to make it so that it would easily go up on YouTube or TikTok. All of my long form content goes to YouTube. I've just started editing my own YouTube videos. It takes me I can trim a stream down in about an hour or 2 if I'm doing one stream, right? If I'm doing 3 or 4 streams and I'm trying to do a week in review for highlights, I need to leave myself a few extra hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours, to go through, watch a VOD, pick out the parts I want of that VOD, and then get rid of the rest of the VOD. So that's like kind of like how I would do it. The biggest thing you can do is not try to be on every platform at once. So really what you should be doing is streaming, and then maybe 1 other platform or 2 other platforms to kind of build that up, with the intention of utilizing that platform to hopefully drive people to Twitch. So like, what you want to do, if you're like, okay, I'm gonna start making TikTok content, right? You want to make it so that people can understand that, like, oh shit, he streams on Twitch and this came from a stream. So if I want to go watch him live, like, I need to go make a Twitch account or check out his Twitch. That I think is what we should be going for. But like, there's no way there's enough time in a day for you to be doing Twitch and TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and Hover and Expand, and like, it's just too much. So you kind of have to pick and choose especially if you're full time, because you also have to be focusing on your live content too. And I think that's a good one, right? Like, if you're not doing that, it becomes also, and this goes back to like our first episode. You have to be honest with yourself about why you're creating content. If you're just streaming as a thing to do, and you're like not wanting to make it a career, and you're like, I don't want to say not serious about it. I think we're all serious about it, all of us who stream. But like, you have to be honest with that reason, right? And if that reason is to eventually do it full time, then you have to be putting out content on other platforms, because there's only so many viewers on Twitch, and a lot of us are fighting for that same pie, right? And time is valuable. I will bulk edit clips. So I am to the point where, from an editing perspective, I can edit a 45-second clip in like 20 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll edit like 5 or 6 clips at once, and then I will use them for TikToks. It's like, boom, I'm going to post this clip to TikTok. I made this Fortnite montage where it's like 4 Fortnite clips, and I'm going to post to TikTok, right? And maybe you post it to YouTube at the same time and see if it does better on one platform or the other. That's an easy way to do it. You don't have to do that, right? I'm not saying that form of content creation is a necessity, but from a growth perspective, each time we post something, you have to think of it like a lottery ticket, right? The more we post stuff onto a social media platform, the higher chance it has of going viral. If all it takes is one, right? 1 or 2 posts go viral and you're in, right? But if we're not posting to other platforms, it just becomes difficult for us to get our name out there, and it gets lost in the noise, right? So my last point before we, unless we have anything we want to discuss, right? My last discussion topic point is it is very important to remember that sometimes just because we pre-planned out a topic of conversation does not always mean that it's going to stay that way the entire stream. We're going to talk about other things, and that's okay. Right? That's really good. If we had a topic of conversation in mind and we got a good, solid little bit out of it, and then the conversation starts to change a little bit and people are talking about other things in the chat, go with it. Right? Like, you got to go with the flow. If my topic of conversation is what's your game of the year and you guys are talking about the last episode of The Boys, well, guess what? Like, we're going to talk about The Boys. And that's okay. Right? If there's a good conversation that's going on, as long as it's not against terms of service or your channel rules, go with it. Remember, the goal is for us to make genuine connections with other people, like not just to treat them like a number or another viewer or, a monetary goal, right? We want to be making friendships with the people who hang out in our channel. Because ultimately, like, that's how we create longevity, right? Like, it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm streaming to my viewers. It's like, nah, man, like, I'm streaming and I am streaming to my friends. Friendship with your viewers. Like, I honestly, I'm gonna be as honest as I can be, right? And I want everybody to truly understand this. I don't view or treat or think of any of you that come in here and hang out and drive conversation, even if you're a lurker. I don't think of any of you like a viewer. You're not a number. You're a person. You're a friend. Like, if you wanted to play games with me and you came in and you're like, hey, Toxic, like, I want to play a game with you. Okay, cool. Like, let's do it. I consider all of you to be friends. Right? And sometimes we don't talk to each other every day, and that's okay. But like, I'm never going to treat you like anything less than a friend. And I'm not perfect, and I'm gonna make mistakes just like any other person does. But that's really what we should be trying to get at, is to make friends. Because perfect example is like Havocast, the captain, and myself. We've been playing games together for like the last 3 Saturdays. And it's getting to the point where like we just have so much fun playing games together. It's like, and we've all been streaming, sometimes we've been streaming at the same time. Like, we're not like advertising it as a co-stream, but like, we're just playing the same game together. And it's a blast when you're playing games with your friends and like getting scared and like it's just fun. And that really helps with our viewership. If we're having fun, your viewers are too. If you're not having fun, the people that are watching you can absolutely tell that you're not having fun. Like, you're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling anybody. If you look miserable when you're streaming, don't think that your chat can't tell. They can tell. Like, and sometimes they're going to call you out on it. They'll be like, hey, like, you do not seem like you're in a good mood. Like, what's wrong, right? Like, but you should play things that you enjoy is my point. So, like, the last main point I had is some of my best friends on Twitch I've made from taking the opportunity to get to know people, not just as viewers. Many of the people that I watch, I truly consider friends. A few of them I've got to meet in person. And like, it's just really cool that we're on a platform that provides us the ability to get to know people on a level like that other times we may not have gotten to know. And that's really special. And I mean, that's a big thing, right? Is making friends with people. You should never go to somebody expecting anything don't don't go into someone's channel expecting something from them. Just go in and say, you know what, I'm gonna try to make a friend with the streamer or a few people in the chat or like whatever. I never expect anything out of anybody. I could go into any of your streams 1,000 times, and if you don't raid me, fine. Like if you want to raid me, fine. If you don't raid me, fine. Like I am not gonna be upset at you because like I don't go to people's channels or hang out with my friends when they're streaming to get anything. Like I don't do that. I go there because I want to watch and I want to be a part of the community and I want to, or, you know, I want to be a part of their Discord, and, you know, being active and around in someone's community is a really good way to get things in some cases, but it shouldn't be the reason why we do it. Right? The reason why we do it is we go hang out with people is because we like what they make. Not because they have more viewers than I do. And if I keep rating them and I'm active in their chat, you know, maybe they'll raid me one day and I'll get famous. Like, it's just not, and people can tell when we're doing that, right? I've been guilty of it before. We've all been guilty of it before. But, you know, I think if you're making friends and you're being around off of stream, is a really good way to make an impact. You know, be in your favorite content creators Discord. Make the effort to sometimes talk in there. You know, those are important things off stream that can help building friendships with other streamers, with other viewers, with, you know, other people, that are gonna help deepen relationships, you know, and hopefully help you get noticed a little more. But that's all I had written down for today. So if anybody has any other questions, we can kind of maybe dig into a few of those. We'll leave like a few minutes for more questions, and then Final Fantasy X, maybe. This made you feel happy? Oh, well, thank you.